My name is Elizabeth Rennie. I'm a longtime resident of Burlington, and I am the MC for this evening. Being here, you show your interest in the issues and the challenges of today. And these affect Burlington. They affect Burlington now and in the future. With this welcome, I acknowledge not only the value of your attendance, but also your willingness to consider and discuss the important issues that impact our city. Be assured that your vote matters. All candidates in running for Ward 6 have been invited to participate in this evening's event. However, the incumbent, Blair Lancaster, has declined the invitation to participate. The ECOB, Engaged Citizens of Burlington, have asked me to take this opportunity to express thanks to the Halton Director of Education, Stuart Miller, and to John Pennyfather, who is, Stuart Miller is the, something else. Anyway, Director of Education, and John Pennyfather, who is a superintendent. I've got it straight, I should know that, my daughter's in the school system. He is the superintendent of schools. And without their help, we would not have had this venue. And so we certainly appreciate their assistance. This evening, our format starts off with the candidates being given an opportunity to make open statements. And then there'll be a session where they're answering questions that have been pre-selected. And these questions generated from social media, from print, and from the candidates themselves. In the next session, the moderator will be given written questions from you, the audience. And the candidates have drawn from the sequence in which they will speak and which they are sitting. And each candidate knows that he will be given 3 minutes to answer the questions. And the timekeeper, Steve, will ensure that the time limits are adhered to. All questions will be directed through the moderator. And then it's time to introduce the moderator. The moderator is Deb Timstra. Deb Timstra, who is a co-host of your TV's The Issue, has been involved in Burlington community activities since she moved here in 1976. She is a past president of the Chamber of Commerce, Burlington Chamber of Commerce, and as a member of the Performing Arts. Deb helped the council to approve the development and the creation of the Burlington Performing Arts Centre. As a community producer and a host of several shows with Cochico, Deb has introduced to the viewers issues that matter, organizations and individuals who believe in the value of contributing to their communities and to contribute in a very positive way. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join with me to welcome our moderator, Deb Timstra.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I really do appreciate being here with you tonight because this is a very important evening. And so I'd like to thank ECOB for arranging this event. I too want to thank all of you for coming out tonight, listening to the candidates, and making an informed decision on October 22nd as you cast your ballot. By being here tonight, you have a voice. But by casting your vote, your voice is even louder. Candidates, you have all chosen to be here, and in doing so, you are showing your dedication and commitment to the city and to your ward through the entire election process. Whether you are the successful candidate or not on October 22nd, all of you should be commended for this dedication and commitment, one that I know none of you and your families have taken lightly. So audience, please join me in thanking our panel. Now, just a few housekeeping notes. This is an opportunity for the candidates to be heard and offer their views and opinions on issues affecting your ward and your city as a whole. I ask all audience members to please refrain from yelling, comments, booing, and being disrespectful to the panel and your fellow attendees. I don't expect any of that from any of you, but it is housekeeping. Applause is welcome, but it would be most welcome at the end of each candidate's remarks. And candidates, please refrain from talking over each other and being disrespectful to your fellow candidates. I also don't expect that that would happen here. Each of you are given equal time, and you can use that time to be passionate about your position. We're going to begin, as Elizabeth said, with a 2-minute introduction presented by each of our candidates. And Angelo, we're going to start with you.
One housekeeping detail, sorry. Didn't get a chance to coach. The timer is visible on the monitor here. It's showing 2 minutes on the clock. When it starts, it'll go green. At the 30-second mark, it'll turn yellow, 15 seconds orange. When it turns red, she gives you the hook.
The hook, not the look. Angelo, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Angelo Bentamania, and I'm a candidate for City and Regional Manager, City and Regional Councillor. I was a candidate in 2014. I thank you for the opportunity for me to reintroduce myself as a ward councillor candidate in 2018. I have lived and worked in our family business for over 25 years. Living and working here in Burlington gives me the perfect balance to represent you. I am a husband, father of 4, grandfather of 2, and my volunteer profile includes sports, schools, Joseph Brent Hospital, and charities. Over the years, I have worked with, mentored, and supported many residents and groups. Together, we have successfully solved many Ward 6 residential issues when our current councillor couldn't. I'm focused, individual, and I get things done. I have demonstrated at council the need to do the right thing. I have successfully delegated to change 2 bylaws. I attend over 70% of City Hall meetings. I was appointed to the Committee of Adjustments because of my knowledge. I know my way around City Hall. My past achievements are a testament of my commitment to you and to this city and to this ward. I hope that tonight, this debate creates a clearer picture for all of you to make your decision to improve this city. Thank you very much.
Ken, are you ready?
Yes.
Your turn.
Thank you everyone for coming out to tonight's debate. My name is Ken White. The reason I'm running here for Ward Councillor is my children, as well as the voters of Ward 6. So I really want to impress that upon you. Professionally, I'm in compliance as well as the portfolio manager. So very simply, I'm in finance and investments. I'm a CFA charter holder as well as a candidate for the CPA accounting designation. One of my first forays into politics was the fact that I joined the group which very vigorously fought the 2 19-story towers, which are still, for the most part, going ahead here in Ward 6 at the east end of Thomas Alton. I've been in Ward 6 now over 10 years, and in Burlington almost my entire life, totaling 49 years. I'm raising 2 boys as a single father, 9 and 11 years old. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Kinsey Shuram. As you may or may not have noticed, I'm 24 years old, a bit younger than these other 2. but looking to bring my youthful experiences to City Council. Fact is, I might be 24, but I have about 10 years of political experience under my belt. I've served in both municipal, provincial, and federal political parties in various capacities, and dealt with numerous stakeholders, things that I'd like to bring to the table should I be elected a city councilor. So some things about me: I went to the University of Waterloo with a degree in biology. I worked in a family lawn care business for about 4 years. My brother happens to own it. We've cut lawns all throughout Ward 6. Done a lot of work with regards to charitable donations for the Carpenter's Hospice as well as the Halton's Women's Center with our Freemasonic group down on Brand Street there. And last but not least, I sit on the Burlington Cycling Committee. So one of the big things I'd like to bring to the table and spearhead is dealing with our infrastructure issues. Fact is, it took me over 2 hours to get here today from my work at Yonge and Eglinton. And I think that's an issue. I think that's a concern for all Burlingtonians who travel about our streets, especially on Burloak there, as well as Upper Middle Road, Appleby, and Walker's Line. And dealing with condos, I think the fact of the matter is we need sensible development. And I've seen it's getting worse and worse. And I think it's about high time we stop writing strongly written letters and saying we're disappointed and doing something about it. So hopefully you'll choose me to be your next city councilor. Thank you.
And as noted, Blair Lancaster chose not to appear tonight. Our first question will be answered by Angelo, and then it will be passed on to Ken and then to Kinsey. So you will have 3 minutes to answer the question, and your first question is, what are your 2 highest priorities for the ward and for the city, and why?
Thank you for the question. In Ward 6, presently, the 2 major priorities that I've heard knocking on doors is the intensification that is being built, especially up in this area here, although we have some a little lower in between Millcroft and Head and Forest, and traffic. Traffic has become a very large issue in our city because of our overdevelopment. We have to fix our signal lighting. We have to work on our roads when the traffic is not happening in the mornings. We had summer times to do them. Now we have school. Those traffics are still going. Work is still being happening in the school areas. I'm sorry, the main levels. I feel very strongly that we have to make left-hand and right-hand turn lanes only in many of our major thoroughways. I think that's a key issue for traffic that is stopped at lights and the person in front of you can't move. But in general, intensification has been a big issue. We're looking at having another, somewhere in the area of about 23 new units that are slated here in Ward 6 over the next, I'm going to say 2, 3, 4 years. There are 8 different large developments happening here. And I think those are the 2 main issues that I hear at the doors over the last, since June the 9th. Thank you very much.
Ken, would you like the question again?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. It's not counting down. Does that mean I don't talk?
There you go. Now you can. You're at 3.
All right. Well, I don't think I'll require 3 minutes. I too have heard when I go door to door that intensification is a major concern. It certainly dovetails with what I've observed when I've gone through city documents with regards to the development here in Ward 6, as well as throughout the city. If we look at 4853 Thomas Alton, which was the the reason I got involved in running for ward council, and you combine that with the number of units at 488 Valera Road, all on the east side of Thomas Alton, that accounts for 12% of the targeted growth between now and 2031. So The point is, with over 1,012 units, and those two developments alone, which are immediate to one another, it represents gross over-intensification and a misapplication of the official plan and the provincial policy statement, which is places to grow, repeated over and over and over again by developers as well as city planning, as a matter of fact. What should be a major concern to the people sitting here today and isn't well understood or even known about is the Uptown Urban Growth Center. For the most part, that's the corner of Appleby Line as well as Upper Middle, and that could be redeveloped. Effectively, it's Millcroft Center into 4,000 units if you use the Skyway Arena or Skyway Plaza as a rough rule of thumb. So clearly, development has gotten out of hand. Secondarily, I'd like to see taxes under control. We have seen an average of 3 to 4% over the last 3 years increase in the budget, and that is forecasted by the city's own staff to continue unabated till about 2026. We have seen modest increase in the actual tax bill of our homes, but the region is going to a pay-as-you-go for infrastructure renewal, and they are going to be decreasing their level of leverage or debt. So what that means is that we're going to see not only increases on the municipal side, which have been uncontrollable and unconstrained, but also added to the regional tax increase. So pretty soon we're going to be on par with Hamilton or Mississauga. And when I looked at the mill rate for Hamilton, I had to check the number twice, but it's literally 3.5 times the mill rate of here in Burlington. Obviously assessments are much lower, but still, we are in for a world of pain, both on taxes as well as intensification.
Kinsey, would you like the question again?
No, I think I'm good. So intensification has been mentioned a lot, and it's a big issue for me. I think the fact of the matter is these condo buildings, as Ken mentioned, they are over-intensifying in certain areas. They don't meet the local infrastructure and what it can actually handle, and at the same time, it doesn't fit the look and feel in the city, right? You look at, for example, the intensification going down on Brand Street. Well, it's out of the ward, and many of us use Spencer Smith Park, whether it be for events or going downtown, and you see these massive condo towers going up, and the city seems powerless to stop them, right? They haven't done anything. In fact, they voted them in, and it's a concern for, I guess, all three of us. So naturally, I think that's definitely a binding point there. But the other issue for me is speed, and I say that because I live on Millcroft Park Drive, and one of the main issues is people come whizzing up and down our street, doing 20 overs, doing 16 to 40, 17 to 40, and there's young kids all about, and you see that across all three neighborhoods represented by Ward 6, and I think it's time we do something about it. And I know the current councillor is engaged in speed reduction measures as well as like such as speed bumps or road narrowing measures. But the fact of the matter is, I believe we need active policing. And for example, I was knocking on doors right there on Country Club and Millcroft Park Drive, and a woman, and not a teenager by any chance, but a grown woman, 40 years old roughly, with 2 kids in the car, nearly hit me, and she ran through a stop sign. And her response to that was waving. And I wasn't letting her merge. I was trying not to get my legs taken out by a minivan. And to me, that's an issue, right? The fact that people seem to think that running stop signs and speeding down our residential roads and threatening our children or our families and people walking dogs, it's a concern, right? And I think it's high time we start doing something about it. And my belief is active policing. I think it's about time we start to, if to put your hand on the stove, I think you should be burned, right? So I think that's one thing. And the other thing is traffic. I think the fact of the matter, it takes me sometimes an hour and 10 to get to work. Like I said, I work at Yonge and Eglinton. If I leave at 9 o'clock, I'm lucky I work in sales. But let's say I went and used Appleby, for example, took the GO train down to Union and took the TTC up. It can take upwards of 2 hours, and 20 minutes to 30 minutes of that sitting in traffic, right? And that's a concern. Why would I use mass transit if I'm stuck in my car the entire time and it takes me longer? So I think it's high time we actually start doing things, whether it be road widening measures, light synchronization, spending more with regards to public transit, getting more people off the roads and into more densely packed vehicles. But the fact of the matter is something needs to be done. because no one wants to move to a city where you're stuck in Toronto traffic without Toronto amenities. So, thank you.
The next question will be answered first by Ken, followed by Kinsey, and then Angelo. Ken, how should council better engage with residents on citywide issues?
Okay. It is one of the pillars of the new official plan to see more city engagement, but let me tell you, it's more city ignorement. I witnessed the council meeting with the new official plan, and 28 very technical, very well-rehearsed, cogent arguments were made against the official plan, even just to leave it as an election issue. It's extremely pro-development. You should have a say, and if I'm on council, we will look to overturn that and right this ship. The city of Burlington does a tremendous amount of advertising, let's call it. I've been to all of those Mobility Hub workshops, and literally they ask for your opinion between two dismal choices or you're not even. So council has to listen, and that's what this election is about. So they're going to listen when they get booted out, and we have a new council. We'll see 5 new faces at least, hopefully all 7. Thank you.
So, given my past political experiences, I've seen different methods in action when it comes to provincial and federal constituency offices. And I think one of the big things is even going farther down the grassroots path is actually knocking on doors and talking to people, right? Being active in the neighborhood and seeing people, walking in the streets and meeting people. The fact is, our current councillor, I haven't met her. She's been my councillor for 8 years, and I've never met her, right? And to me, that's a concern. I think you should meet your councillor. I think there should be more action, and I think you should bring, these attention to the doors, right? I think it's high time we start holding town halls. I think we should start doing things proactively and engaging the citizens and bringing them out, so that if you do want to send forth a delegation, you've actually met with your councillor, you know how they feel, you've talked about it, you've met other people in the community, and bringing engaged citizens together, right? I'm thankful ECOP hosted this debate. I know there was some pushback from our current council in terms of attending and wanting to attend, but the fact of the matter is, there should be more groups who are looking to get engaged, and I think one of the ways to do that as a city councillor is to get your staff involved, to get yourself involved, and be knocking on doors and making sure their issues are heard. Thank you.
Angelo, the question is, how should council better engage with residents on city-wide issues?
Thank you for the question. Well, I'm a pretty communicative individual when it comes to talking to people. I do talk to groups of people. I spend a lot of time explaining the issues that are about to arise. I think this present council has avoided the communication from the beginning of the projects. Each of the programs that come on stream, it's unfortunately, we only hear about them once the decisions, for the most part, have been made, both at city level and at council level. One of my suggestions and one of my solutions would be to create what is called a ratepayers group, I guess you can call it, or a group of individuals in each of the neighborhood areas of Ward 6. So we'd have one in rural, we'd have one in Millcraft, we'd have one in Head Forest, and we'd have one here in Alton. And meet once a quarter, just because, and say, what are your concerns? What has been happening in your town? What are people talking about? So we can take all those concerns and create a guide to fix them before they actually get going. As far as the intensification goes, on the same topic, because that's a lot of what is happening right now, and when I say intensification, the buildings that are going up, we need to meet with the residents of the area when the developer comes to the door. So the meetings that I have been to have been, the plans are already made. And so the discussion becomes, what do you like best? Instead of saying, how do we create what you like? Because there's money involved. They're already 3-4 steps ahead of us. So that's my solution to engagement. And I think by creating those kinds of atmospheres, we create a positive environment. Thank you very much.
Kenzie, the cornerstone of any municipality is the official plan. Burlington passed the plan and sent it to Halton Region for approval. If you're elected, is there anything in the official plan that you would change?
And so one of the big things I think we've already spoken about is the developments and the developments going forward, right? I think the fact of the matter is the majority of Burlingtonians are against them. They affect the look and feel of the city, and they don't do us any favors when it comes to traffic and congestion and our aging infrastructure, right? The fact is our roads are stuck in the 70s, so I think it's high time we start focusing on the people who pay taxes now. Instead of focusing on, a future group of constituents. I think it's, we're being left behind. It goes back to, not upgrading our lights and, introducing more light synchronization and, road widening measures, as well as protected bicycle lanes, right? There are a lot of ways to make Burlington better, and I think they fall apart when you sit there and say, well, here's a solution to our intensification issues. Let's just build a bunch of, 20-story towers in Alton Village. The fact of the matter is, we might as well build a 50-story tower and call it done, because you clearly don't care, right? And that's a concern for me. I even, I was knocking on doors in Atchison, just out in Millcroft there, and I talked to a woman. She told me she got a hold of our current councillor, and she had concerns about the condos and whatnot, and the current councillor told her, why do you care? You don't live here. And to me, that's a concern, right? And that's the kind of stuff that we never heard. That's the things we never got to put forward. And I think all those delegations need to be heard again, so that when we revisit the official plan, which I'm sure we will, given this election seems to be more of a change issue, we'll actually be able to take it to task and say, hey, the people don't want this. They don't want these massive skyscrapers, these condos going up. They want, this or that or wherever. And I think there's high time we actually have responsible governance brought back to Burlington. So that's the one thing I would change, would be the development for sure. Thank you.
Sorry. Angelo, the cornerstone of any municipality is the official plan. Burlington passed the plan and sent it to Halton Region for approval. If you're elected, is there anything in the official plan that you would change?
Well, the first thing that we can change is what the region decides is not part of their program. So if the region's official plan is set out, and then they overlay our official plan on top of that, what is not overlaid is the only thing that we can't change. We can't take it back and say, let's redo a new one. So, having said that, what's very important for all of us to know is council needs to make certain decisions when the decisions need to be made at the time that these projects and these happen. So, for example, the new buzzwords for developers because the official plan has an opening, is the word amendment. So if something is zoned for 8 stories, we'll use that as an example, and it may go from 8, maybe it might go 10 or 12, something reasonable. They come in and they say, we would like to have a zoning amendment. And so the discussion happens at council, it's yay or nay. And obviously it's been more yays than nays. That's just the one example. The other example in the official plan is the official plan amendment. So for example, here in Alton, we have some pretty large buildings. 2 of them are 18 stories. One is a 4-story and a 10-story now at the OMB. Those are official plan amendments. They used to be zoned commercial. So along the way, it got amended to residential. So that gives the opening for people to say, how high you like to go. So those are the things that we need to focus on as residents in Ward 6. I think sometimes the picture is bigger than we think. And I'm hoping from a regional standpoint, councilors are part of the region, that we can talk as a group, 21 members in the regional council, and say, we need to take some of this stuff and just tweak it so that we can make things a little easier and help the whole city. Thank you very much.
Ken, the cornerstone of any municipality is the official plan. If you're elected, is there anything in the official plan that you would change?
Well, just the cover, the back, and everything in between. It's a serious question. So, when I was delegating for 4853 or against 4853 Thomas Alton, even Rick Craven said under the existing official plan we could get to 250 people, 250,000 people as a city without any changes. When you look at the provincial places to grow policies paper and do the arithmetic, given the area of the urban growth center, we're looking at about 235,000 people by 2031, and we're at almost 200,000. And in fact, in some targets for intensification, we're 80% of the way there, 13 years in advance. The official plan shouldn't be vilified. It's a tool. So obviously, like a hammer, you can either build a house or you can smash your thumb. In this case, I think we're smashing ourselves in the face. With the official plan, when I examined some of what the language is surrounding farmland, I think that would be actually acceptable to farmers in North Burlington, whereas the regional official plan is contrary to that. One of the things that would definitely change is the downtown urban growth center. Oakville very easily, very early on, and very successfully lobbied the provincial government to remove its downtown as an urban growth center. Why didn't we? Also the uptown urban growth center, similarly. I think this is extremely dangerous. We have in the official plan, and generally when you have an official plan, it's relatively broad, but in this case they detail 20-story towers, 11-story towers, 4-story towers. So they're stepping it back from the corners of Appleby and Upper Middle, but still, it's going to be a massive build when that day comes, and it will come. Again, just use the example of the Skyway Plaza, a very tired retail plaza down in Southeast Burlington, and you know, RioCan is a business who owns the Millcroft Center. They will sell. I would re-examine mobility hubs. Each mobility hub is 20,000 new people, and people forget, or perhaps they don't, we don't even have a transit plan. So without a transit plan, it's like a two-legged table, it just falls over. It shouldn't even exist. So those are all the things that we have to get to work on when I'm in council. Thank you.
Angela, we'll start with you on this question. Burlington shares a rural area with Milton and Oakville that adds to the character and geography of our community. The region has challenged CN Rail in court on jurisdictional disputes because the proposed CN logistics hub is not consistent with the current land use planning framework. With the potential of 1,600 trucks a day in and out of this hub, it will further add to the traffic congestion and environmental concerns. How would you be proactive on the CN issue?
Wow, it's like 2014 all over again. For those people who are not aware, and I think most people in this room are not aware, I happen to have gone to every meeting that was both in Milton and at the region discussion-wise. Maybe just one or two. But it is a serious, serious issue that's going to take place in Halton. And I won't use the word Milton because we're part, obviously, of Halton. The region has taken a position where they're going to sue the government and CN for doing what they're doing. So what they're doing is they're going to build a CN rail hub. For those people who are not familiar with the rail hub, there's one in Brampton, there is one, well, I'll just say Brampton, and as Deb mentioned, there are approximately 1,200 trucks. Now these trucks are not just regular trucks, they're double trucks. I don't know what they call them, piggyback stuff. And they're going to go 24 hours, 7 days a week. And they're going to load up, and they're going to take the shortest distance to get to where they got to get to. And that shortest distance could be Tremaine Road, Appleby Line, Walker's Line, and so on and so forth. So we need to be engaged and know what's going on. What I plan to do, and I've been active with a lot of the rural residents already, CN, because they're considered federal, which they are not a Crown Corporation anymore, they are now a public company. So they should not be looked at as air parks. And we all know all about air parks in 2014, that's why I'm coming full circle here. They do not, CN do not have to go through 31, count them, 31 different agencies, which includes water, which includes anything, Niagara Escarpment, any of the agencies that we all have to go through, they need to go through none of them. So this is the kind of stuff that we all need to be aware of, and there's going to be battle down the road. It's going to affect our lives day to day. So what do we have to do? We have to stay focused and help be engaged and help the region and the city to say, hey, we need to do something about this. And I'm prepared to do what I have to do as your counselor not to let this happen, because it's going to affect our kids and our grandkids. Thank you.
Ken, would you like the question again?
Go ahead.
Burlington shares a rural area with Milton and Oakville that adds to the character and geography of our community. The region has challenged CN Rail in court on jurisdictional disputes because the proposed CN logistics hub is not consistent with the current land use planning framework. With the potential of 1,600 trucks a day in and out of this hub, it will further add to the traffic congestion and environmental concerns. How would you be proactive on the CN issue?
Okay, so my understanding of the rail hub was that it was just simply too close to the existing Milton GO station and downtown core. So when you're talking this rather large rail yard, and I understand the concern for the citizens, I feel it could be successfully moved. I don't know how vigorously CN is going to try and defend its existing position. When we're talking about 1,600 trucks, let's just remember that James Snow Parkway as well as the 401 will probably take most of that truck traffic. Halton Hills is, part of the region official plan for industrial space, and so you'll see fulfillment warehouses and that type of thing. I don't believe that we have to go nuclear on this particular issue. Traffic coming down to the QEW will probably be serving local businesses, and it'll probably go down a regional road, most likely Highway 25, far enough from Burlington, may I add. I don't know. If there is another issue with regards to this rail yard, I'd have to look at it again more closely. Thanks.
Kinsey? Do you want the question again?
No, I'm good. So I think one of the big things is, being both city and regional councillors, the fact of the matter is you have to represent the region, right? And I think the big problem here is, you're right that you're having 1,300 trucks a day coming up and down regional roads, not just Ward 6, right? I think Ken's right on the fact that a lot of that stuff's going to be taken by James Snow Parkway and be stuck up at the 401. But the fact of the matter is it does affect the region. And I think it's, I think it's wrong. Like I said, it goes back to traffic. It goes back to other concerns that we have as a city. Imagine trying to, cycling up Guelph Line or Walker's Line and having a large tractor trailer, someone who's, might be sleep deprived or whatever, hauling next to you. Like, it's already dangerous enough, right? And it's just a general concern. I think if it were up to me and I was a city councilor, I would wholeheartedly support the region and the province, who's now jumped on that lawsuit. And I think the fact of the matter is it should be moved, right? And there should be more considerations done to protect not only the look and feel of the region, but the people who live here, right? The fact is, it's not just Burlington that we represent. We help the folks out in Milton, we help the folks out in Oakville, and like I said, having massive trucks, whether, let's say there's a pile up on the 401, and all those trucks take the QEW and come up through Burloak. Well, I don't know about you, but the fact of the matter is having trucks come up and down Appleby or Walker's Line, especially at 4, 5, 6 o'clock, our roads are already in tatters, we're already stuck bumper to bumper, it's only going to get worse, right? And I don't think that should be an option or something that we should be afraid of. I think that should be an issue resolved elsewhere. And one of the things I'd like to do would be starting a PR campaign, right? A lot of people don't know about the intermodal issue, or those that do are directly affected within. In Milton, it's a big thing, but not so much here in Burlington. And I really can't say much about Oakville, but I think it's high time we give them some bad press. One of the best ways to get a company or any group off anyone's back is to show them that the people care and it's a concern, and the media is against them, right? Because media pressure, once applied, right, over time, it tends to turn things kind of sour, and all of a sudden they're looking to move, whether it be in a more northern location or a location that's less likely to affect our traffic and the region itself. So that's the plan I would propose if elected. Thank you.
Ken, we'll start with you on this round. Being on council, you can't hear me? Can you put me up louder? Okay, is that better? All right, there we go. Ken, being on council involves serving on other agencies, boards, and committees. Where could you contribute best at the city and at the region?
Okay, boards, so there are a lot of citizen advisory boards that councillors do serve on. Some people have taken exception with councillors being on citizen advisory boards because it scuppers the independence of the board, perhaps. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think it's worth mentioning and examining. I would love to serve on the cycling committee. I'd love to serve on the Sustainability Development Committee. I'd like to also serve on Burlington Hydro, but that's probably not going to happen. Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Kenzie, would you like the question?
Yes, please.
Being on council involves serving on other agencies, boards, and committees. Where could you contribute best at the city and at the region?
So, as I mentioned before, I sit on as a member of the cycling committee, so it'd be great to be able to come back there as a councillor and to work alongside them. The fact is, more and more Burlingtonians are cycling every year, and I think it's one way to start solving traffic issues. As much as I don't think we should start closing roads, for example, but I think one of the best ways to get people cycling would be protected cycling lanes. Right? The fact of the matter is having people, cycle alongside cars without any barrier in between. It's very difficult to get people cycling if you feel like you're going to be hit by a car, or should the intermodal yard go through, by a truck, and you're constantly fearing for your life, right? People don't want to do that on a daily basis, therefore they don't cycle. So I think that would be one thing. And regionally, I'd like to get involved with regards to the police services board. The fact is, it goes back to speeding. It goes back to getting more involved with our neighborhoods in terms of security and, like I said, stopping folks who are breaking the law and running stop signs and whatnot. And one of the things I'd be looking to do would be getting more more people involved in the auxiliaries, right? A lot of people don't know police auxiliaries. I myself served with the St. John's for 3 years when I was at University of Waterloo, and found it incredibly rewarding. And I think a lot of people would find it interesting, whether they're looking to join the police services in Halton or otherwise, or looking to give back to their community, to join the auxiliary police force. And those are men and women that we could put to good use, whether it be, like I said, policing our streets and just engaging in constant policing and constant oversight. So those are the two boards I'd be interested in joining should I be elected city council.
Angelo, being on council involves serving on other agencies, boards, and committees. Where could you contribute best at the city and at the region?
Well, as a city councilor, you get to serve on municipal boards, and from a regional standpoint, you get to serve on a regional board. I think my strengths, I know my strengths are basically, from a regional standpoint, on affordable housing. I have some tremendous background from a personal business, personal side, groups that I'm involved with, annually it's the largest food drive, for example, in the country. And I think the people I've met over the years, and the people I've associated, the groups that I've talked to and so forth, being on the affordable housing group at the region, I can certainly contribute to help individuals, because there's a common denominator there: food, housing, jobs, those kinds of scenarios. And a lot of the solutions comes from education, and that's one of the factors that we don't do very well in our city to alleviate some of these things. So that's where I would be able to help as a regional level. From a municipal level, I believe in helping in the seniors sector as an advisory committee. The bulk of our population here in Burlington, Halton, are seniors. We need to embrace that. We need to make sure that we're tuned in to what's happening to them. We need to look forward 5 and 10 years and say, what can we do now to help them be active, be mobile, and contribute in our city, which is something that we handcuff them at this particular point. And we'll get into probably more of that scenario with some of these other topics. But that's my position. Those are my two strengths. I have others in terms of, BEDC, but I know we can only do so much on our first term, on our first year. So, but I will certainly be very active in those two categories. Thank you.
Kinsey, we'll start with you on this question. What would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like to see council do more of?
Well, with regards to doing less of, I think it's a little less spending our money inappropriately. I think the fact of the matter is that taxes have gone up since 2014 by about 4% or so. Each year is a concern, right? I mean, for services not rendered, things haven't changed, right? And I think it's high time we start looking at the books and seeing where we're spending all this money and where it's going. Because last time I checked, everything's still the same. My street barely gets plowed. I have to go out before work with a shovel and help people, get out to, get stuck in the snow, especially on the side streets, and it's unfortunate, right? You shouldn't be paying, for example, we pay $8,800 a year in tax, and streets aren't being plowed. Like, I'm originally from Sudbury, and taxes are less, and it's a lot more north, obviously. But the fact of the matter is that people plow their streets. I've traveled from Sault Ste. Marie to Cornwall, and you don't see the issues with the tax base that we have and the people paying the taxes that we have. And the services that aren't rendered it's extraordinary. Like it's wild. So that's one thing I'd put an end to if elected city council. What I'd like to see more of, and I think it's been spoken across this table, is a little bit more discussion with our constituents. right? Like I said, you know, you look at provincial and federal politics, right? You see politicians going door to door pretty much, you know, once a month or whatever, connecting with constituents, and obviously it's to get elected. But I think it's high time municipal councilors stop doing the whole door-to-door thing only to get elected. I think it's, you know, during their term, I think that's something you should do. And I think that's something we should start holding, whether we, like I said, town halls or, as Angelo mentioned, setting up groups in all 3 neighborhoods in the rural areas. The fact is we need to engage people more, and it's something that we haven't been doing. And if elected, that is a plank you can hold me to for sure. Thank you.
Angelo, what would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like to see council do more of?
That's a pretty loaded question. I'd like to see council do more homework on how they spend our money. That's really the caption here. So the example being, the questions that we ask when delegates come in and the questions that we ask staff don't align with each other. So I'll give you 3 examples. One, we know the road diet. Everyone in the city knew the New Street road diet was not going to work. Our council did not ask, in my opinion, the questions to staff that would relate to the end result, which we all know what happened. That project cost us, taxpayers, a lot of money. That's number 1. Number 2, recently we had a decision made on the LaSalle Marina. Some people up here are probably not aware of it. So the LaSalle Marina received $4 million of our money because we didn't ask the questions that I thought should have been asked. So we're all sitting here, would you give someone $4 million when they don't own the land on the property that they operate? Would you give someone $4 million when their lease is up in a couple of years? And again, I'm saying, without a payment program to build a wave break. I know I wouldn't do that. So you can add the New Street diet, the marina, and now I'm going to throw in, and I might get heck for this, the Joseph Brent Museum, which our councillor put a motion forward. The federal government, provincial government gave our city, our museum, approximately $11 or $12 million. Don't quote me exactly, I'm within a couple of $1 million. That wasn't enough money to build it. They needed another $1.2 million because they wanted some frills, and we gave it to them. Our money. They need to do less of that and more accountability. Thank you.
Ken, your turn. What would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like them to do more of?
Well, I'm a relatively positive individual, so I guess I'm going to focus more on what I'd like to see more of. A good example would be Burlington Hydro, which many residents wouldn't realize is a privately owned corporation, wholly owned by the city of Burlington. It pays taxpayers or council, well, correction, not exactly council directly, but 5.7% as a dividend. And what I'd like to see is a little bit more transparency and financial discipline, if you will. We pay $9 million in debt charges per the 2018 budget. Why not if we're going to make discretionary withdrawals from the Bank of Burlington Hydro, which is owned by you, why don't we see a disciplined mandate where we're paying dollar for dollar? We withdraw $1 million like we did for mobility hubs as a special dividend from Burlington Hydro, pay $1 million down in debt. And that $1 million might not sound like a lot of money on a $247 million capital and operating budget, but it's $15 per household. So, you know, I would like the city to buy me lunch at some point in time. We look at the Joseph Brant Museum. I think they could use a calculator more often. So when you take the $11.4 million in construction costs and divide it by the 17,000 square feet, you get $650 a square foot. That's extremely expensive. You could buy a very nice house here in the city of Burlington for $500 a square foot and still get the land. That should have triggered a little aha moment in many of the councilors' heads and said, look, can we not hold the line at $400 a square foot, or $500 a square foot, or maybe $300 a square foot? You didn't have to dig down 2 stories right next to the lake. That is the reason why it costs so much money. I'm not suggesting that there was any malfeasance by any means, but we're not going to see the return on investment on that museum that cost the citizens of Burlington $4 million, as a matter of fact, and there was overages. I'm a fan, I'm a supporter of the museum, but not at all cost. Lastly, we talked about the LaSalle Park Marina. That was a great one. Now the good news is that the city was proposing a $13 million armor stone breakwater for the marina, and now it's down to $4 million that floats away. I think we could use students, the MBA students from DeGroote, to do better business plans for us here, because there was no business plan for that museum. Thank you.
Well, that ends our first hour, and the second hour is questions from all of you. So, Angela, we'll start with the first question from our audience tonight. How will you address the traffic congestion and gridlock due to intensification?
Okay. Sounds like my first question. I thought I heard. Anyways, how do you address gridlock through intensification? I think what has happened at this particular stage, and everyone talks about it at council, the numbers come from the province. They tell each of the municipalities, in this case they tell the region, you have to grow by this many people, and the number is 500,000 people. So the region now has to decide how to disperse that population amongst all the cities. So Burlington is working on doing what they're doing. The focus is obviously downtown. We've heard all about that. There's focus up here. There's 8 different developments. We need to fix the infrastructure that we have now. When I say the infrastructure, the roadways now, the lighting system, the synchronization program. We need to do that now before the rest of the stuff comes on stream. That costs money too. So as a councillor, being a regional councillor as well, we need to go back to the province and say things like, we need support here. You want us to do all this. We need to do all this. Our roads need some work. Appleby Line, Walker's Line, all those regional roads, they're not set up for all of this intensification. Our roads in town, uptown, downtown, they're not set up for this intensification. Our underground piping set up for this intensification. We need some support. We need to be able to look at that and say, hey, help us out here before we move forward. So sometimes we just need to say, we need to slow down. Thank you.
Ken, how will you address traffic congestion, gridlock due to intensification?
Okay, so I finally squeezed it out of a planner from the city of Burlington, and what they told me was that really this is a war on the car. Now, I think our attitudes towards the car can and should change, but circumstances don't. So when I'm taking my kids to hockey, we're driving in the car. When I need to get drywall from Lowe's, I'm driving in a car. I'm not taking a bicycle, I'm not walking back with it. That's just the reality, and I don't think planners at the city of Burlington actually understand that. Some easy wins for traffic would definitely be light synchronization. When I came across a traffic expert in my canvassing, who worked for Hamilton, who worked for Oakville, who worked for other municipalities except Burlington. Burlington has a reputation of bad light synchronization. I think it was partially addressed in this budget, but let's pray to God, let's just fix it. Transit is definitely going to carry the day when it comes to, you know, what the city looks like 10, 20, 30 years from now. When I actually spoke with people who live in home of region housing, they said to me, well, you know what, we take taxis. It's like, are you kidding me? Transit is so bad, they're forced to take taxis. Now, how I would solve the transit problem is by using the hydro cuts as a dedicated bus lane. The City of Mississauga has done this very successfully. It was expensive, but technically I feel our project would be less demanding. But still, you're looking at about $50 to $100 million. And the reason why we haven't seen a transit plan from the City of Burlington is because they can't get their arms around those kinds of numbers, and it would have to be an admission by current council that intensification is a failure if you can't do transit successfully.
Kinsey.
Hello there. So I think a lot of this has been echoed already by all three of us, really. But obviously, one of the big things is light synchronization. It's proven to work. The other thing I advocate for is road widening measures. You know, Appleby line should be three lanes on either side all the way down, especially given the fact that recently they just announced that there's going to be around 220 more GO trains stops at on both lakeshore lines. So the fact is, more and more people are going to be using the GO train, and I think it's high time we actually started moving things a lot faster going in that direction. Ken touched on a very good point with regards to transit. Currently, the bus shows up once on my birthday. I think it's high time we start investing more into transit, right? Especially lines that are constantly used. I know, for example, there was a pilot program that was squashed by council, allowing for seniors to use off times and ride for free on the bus, and I think that's something that should be instituted. It's worked really well in Oakville, and I think it would increase bus ridership. And I think as more people use the bus and it becomes more reliable, especially in areas where they are looking to intensify and, you know, supposing we are able to fight for, you know, lower intensification numbers, it's something where we can, you know, make sure there's bus stops there and making sure the bus arrives on time and gets those people to the GO stations, to downtown where these people are headed. It's, you know, one measure. And I think the other thing is, I know obviously cycling is not a big thing on a lot of people's minds, but the fact is, you know, 2% of people, of Burlingtonians cycle. And I think having dedicated bike lanes, especially if you're already instituting road widening measures, is one way to get people, especially going down Appleby and headed into the GO station, because a lot of people, especially if they're thinking about instituting paid parking at the Appleby GO as well as Aldershot and Burlington, it makes a lot more sense to bike there and save money that way than taking your car and being dinged there and then dinged by Metrolink. So that's the plan.
Support of climate action.
Okay, climate action, is that the last word you said?
Yes.
Okay, so there are a few initiatives which I think would be impactful and not high cost. So I would definitely support a tree canopy target. I would definitely support green roofs for new development and even retrofitting old development if that's possible. I would also like to see more diverting of garbage from commercial as well as food waste from restaurants. I think that could be used to feed people who are disadvantaged. with success, and all these small changes add up to big change. Thank you.
So I think I mentioned a few things when we were speaking about with regards to intensification in traffic. Getting more people on bikes as well as getting more people on the buses is obviously one way to cut down on environmental damage that Burlingtonians are creating. I think another thing is having a discussion about garbage. Now, one of my platform points is once a week garbage collection, and while contrary to environmental standards and obviously creating more of a carbon footprint, the fact of the matter is a ton of Burlingtonians head to the regional dump. You see massive lineups. They're not contractors, they're suburbanites who are throwing their garbage out, or they're throwing them in our parks and in private land. So I think there needs to be a discussion with regards to garbage, right? And I think there needs to be something with teaching more and more people about how to recycle more, and how to compost more. And obviously, currently, that's not something, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But I think there should be more educational programs put in place. And with regards to the quarry, it's not in our ward, obviously, but I think it's something that we should look at. I know one of the issues that was pointed out to me was the fact that they're not allowing any third-party consultants, environmental consultants, to go in there. And I think that's something that I don't see an issue with a third-party consultant going in anywhere, especially if sponsored by the city to go look into things, and if they come out with findings that are against provincial, federal, or municipal environmental laws and standards, then something needs to change, right? So I'm totally supportive of that measure as well as the others I mentioned, and it's not perfect, but it's something we can work towards. Thank you.
Angelo, do you accept that action on climate change and disruption is urgently needed? And if so, what role can Burlington Council play in support of climate action?
Well, first of all, I think our city, from all the discussions I've heard and discussions I've been to, the city have actually done a pretty good job internally with green gas emissions. I hear it at council meetings, I hear it at committee meetings, I hear it when staff talk about it. So they have done a fairly good job in that end of the issue. Where we really need to work on is things like idling of vehicles. We need to work on elimination of people going from their car to the park down 2, 3, 4 kilometers down the street with their kids, with their family, with their grandkids. And they use their cars because on nice days, especially the warm days, the sun's pretty hot. Most parks don't have the shade that we need. So I think we need to work on things to make it more family friendly so we can walk to these parks, make them more environmentally friendly. The other thing I talked about idling is drive-thrus. We need to work on moving cars through drive-thrus much faster. We actually have an idling association in Burlington. I actually knocked on the guy's door. And he went on and on and on, and how much that affects how we live. And I think those are the things we need to focus on, the non-traditional items of taking our families, doing the things that we used to do 20, 30, 40 years ago. Why can't we have a barbecue at Ireland Park? Why can't we have a barbecue at that right? Bring a picnic basket, enjoy it. We do it in Lowville, why can't we do it here? More often in our city. Thank you.
Kinsey, given that the majority of Burlington's tree canopy is on private property, and that Burlington's tree coverage is below Environment Canada's 30 to 50% minimum requirement to support a sustainable environment, and that significantly more trees are being lost as a result of emerald ash borer, if elected, will you support the immediate implementation of a citywide private property tree protection bylaw?
Well, I think the thing is, when it comes to going on to private properties, obviously it's a bit of a touchy issue, right? Who's the city to start telling people that they need to cut down trees? But I do think there should be a program initiated in the sense that we need to include incentives, right, to help people want to purchase trees and want to keep their trees, right? And how we go about that, something to consult with. For example, I know we have a few organizations that are involved with regards to our environment. We have a woman there in the green shirt there, and I'm sure I'd speak to her, and how we go about that, right? Because the fact of the matter is, you don't want to start stamping on people's lawns and saying, hey, you got to keep that tree, like I'm going to tell you what to do with regards to your trees. But at the same time, the stats are right. You're absolutely correct in that we're falling behind. So something needs to be done. It needs to be done in consultation with the residents, and we need to do something that's both effective in getting people to keep their trees and to plant more trees. And as a city, we could be obviously always doing better. And you look at for example, we're looking to develop the area just below the 407. I think that's something that needs to be looked at and kept green space so that we can continue to work towards the goal of upping our tree canopy level. But the fact of the matter is there needs to be incentives, and it can't just be, like I said, telling people what to do on their private property, because last time I checked, every time you tell someone that and tell them what to do, things don't work out well, right? You look at the pipeline going out in BC as an example of such. You can't just tell people to do, you need to consult them, and I think that's a conversation we should have at a council level and at a ward level. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
Angelo, given that the majority of Burlington's tree canopy is on private property and that Burlington's tree coverage is below Environment Canada's 30 to 50% minimum requirement to support a sustainable environment, I'm going to miss some of this to shorten it up. Will you support the immediate implementation of a citywide private property tree protection bylaw?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. My suggestion would be, I think, because it's such a tough issue, it's tough to tell someone who owns a tree in his backyard not to cut it down because it's ruining his pool, the leaves are going in his pool, the neighbor's pool, all that kind of stuff. It's also difficult to see in one of our wards, I see one of the councillor candidates here, in another ward where they're trying to cut down 9,000 trees. So I see both sides of it here. I think what we need to do is get some smart people, and there's lots in this room, and say, how can we make this thing work? And my suggestion would be, and I'm just making a suggestion, is can we tier a bylaw, a private tree bylaw? Can we tier it? So for example, if you want to cut one down from your home, and we're talking a tree or two, because it needs to come down for whatever reason, and you can justify it coming down, and you could plant another tree somewhere else that it's needed, that might work. From a commercial standpoint, when someone comes in and says, I'm cutting these 40 trees because I'm building a house, well, maybe that's something that we can do something about. I don't have that answer, but I think we can do something. We can do something when someone comes in and says, I want 9,000 trees knocked down. Okay, that's going to cost you, depending on who you talk to at the city, it could be $400 a tree or $800 a tree. They might think about that. So anyways, that's my proposal at this particular point. Thank you.
Do you want the question, Ken?
I'm ready to roll.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, all right, so the problem in Alton Village, some of these newer communities, the housing stock in Burlington, 20% of it is less than 10 years old. So that doesn't give trees a whole lot of time to get established. Half the trees you plant die. The problem I see when I talk to people isn't the trees in their backyard, because when you have a postage stamp of a backyard and you expect to stay there 25 years, that tree will be too damn big for the house in the backyard, so it's probably not the best place. Where we need the trees are on the boulevards, so we can see shade on the streets, begin to reduce the heat sink that urbanization causes. And when people's trees die and they get cut down by the city, it takes years before they're replanted. So what are our options? I have done this personally at my expense to myself because trees are beautiful. You wouldn't normally think of me as a tree hugger. But I planted 3 trees on my own property. There were these green sugar maples, and I just wasn't getting, digging it, so I replaced them with red crimsons. Much happier now, of course. But for a nominal cost, $100, $150. I mean, trees are important to people. If they have a nice house, they're more than willing to pay the city a meaningful cost to reestablish those trees in their front boulevard. And I think that would be a way to economically get the issue of more tree planting done here in the city of Burlington for the betterment of all of us. Thank you.
Angela, we're starting with you. The Burlington Air Park has been a contentious issue for Ward 6, Burlington and Halton Region. Are you in favor of the air park expanding runways to accommodate large aircraft? Why or why not?
We are resurrecting this, right? I'm totally, 110% against expanding any of their runways. I think the air park has served its purpose in terms of becoming, or was, a flight training school. It is serving its purpose as emergency helicopter service in the region. We have too much to lose, and we just finished talking about the environment. We just finished talking about emissions and all that kind of stuff. We live in a city that 5 minutes, where we are here in Alton, Ward 6, 5 minutes you can be down to the lake, and in 5 minutes you can be picking strawberries. I don't want to be counting planes. You can do that in Toronto. We need to protect what we have. People want what we have because it's nice. People push small communities. We see it with the rail yards in Milton. People push small communities because we're quiet. We just go with the flow. We don't organize ourselves. We need to start thinking about our future and our family's future. No, we don't need any more air park. Thank you.
Ken, the Burlington Air Park has been a contentious issue in Ward 6, Burlington and Halton Region. Are you in favor of the air park expanding runways to accommodate larger aircraft? Why or why not?
Okay, so yes, you're definitely correct. The air park has been contentious. I don't want to be sued, so I'll be saying that other people tell me the owner has been a bad actor, and other people tell me that would be accurate. So the runways have already been expanded. As a CFA charter holder in economics, Sky, etc., I mean, one of the absolute economic advantages Burlington has is actually the air park. But in its current incarnate, I cannot in good conscience support expansion of that particular airport until the people who have been aggrieved are made whole again. Why don't we just leave it there? Thank you.
And Kinsey, thank you. And Kinsey.
So yeah, I completely agree with the 2 fellows sitting next to me. I would not expand the air park. I've also heard stories at the doors about how it's been poorly managed, and just to quote Ken, the owner is a bad actor. And as someone who's done consultant work out in Mississauga Malton, it's a riding where Pearson is located. Not to say it's going to expand to that size, but just whether it be noise pollution, increased traffic, increased issues, whether it be and I hate to say this, but even crime, for example, and stuff like that, because that's what happens, right? You get people coming in and out of a city and an area where they can come in and out, and that's what happens, right? You have increased security issues, and on top of more traffic, more noise pollution, and I don't think it's something that Burlington needs, right? I think we need to focus on the people who live here now and the issues that we're suffering from traffic intensification and whatnot. I think adding a larger air park and causing more issues both to the people who live next to it and the folks who live in Ward 6 and the region is not something we need to take to task. Like I said, we should focus on the issues we have now, and there's plenty of those, so thank you very much.
Ken, what is your stand on affordable housing, and would you use the federal money recently allocated for affordable housing? How?
Are you going to? Oh, okay.
How would you use the federal money?
One more time from the top, please.
Let's try this. And I apologize to whoever wrote this if I get the question incorrect. What is your stand on affordable housing, and how would you use the federal money recently allocated for affordable housing?
Okay, so a lot's been made of affordable housing, but the term gets thrown around very loosely. I have to sit here and disappoint a lot of people and kind of explain the economics of why affordable housing is somewhat of a myth. And I will carry on in my conversation. If you take a graph with one axis as the housing price and the horizontal axis as the square footage of the home, you will invariably get a line like this. You might have a bit of a J-curve, etc., but that's not important. So what you need to do to increase affordable housing or make housing more affordable is actually take this line and move the whole line. There's no bending it, just simply because if people could buy less expensive housing, they would bid it up and then it would be market value very quickly. We live in a very expensive part of the world, and counterintuitively, the new official plan with its focus on multi-unit residential has actually increased the price of housing. As developers have increased, speculated on the cost of the land for higher and higher and denser builds, the per door cost of this land is now being worked into the price of the units, and this is signaling to buyers, whether they're at the bottom or the middle or the top, that as prices increase, they should increase prices, causing a negative feedback loop. All of this will end when rates go up and unemployment increases. Unfortunately, I certainly don't want that, and I think there will be a nasty hangover. Region of Halton has 5,000 units, 4,000 of them are income geared. I do look at possibly increasing that number. We're spending $90 million.
Thank you very much. I just cut somebody off. No book required. Kinsey, what is your stand on affordable housing, and how would you use the federal money recently allocated for affordable housing?
Well, I'm going to have to kind of agree with Ken in the sense that a lot of this is based off the economics of the region and just how it stands, right? The fact is, Burlington's a wanted area to live in, so it's hard to get affordable housing. But at the same time, I think one of the big things is income-geared housing. I think that's a great idea, and going back to intensification, for example, there is over-intensification, but it still needs to be intensified. And I see one of the things I'd like to do if I was elected city councilor and using the money granted to us is to build more low-income geared homes, especially condos and apartments that aren't 19 stories, 20 stories, but in the region of 6 stories that fit, like I said, the look and feel of the city, and our infrastructure is capable of handling, especially once upgraded. And it's something that people can aid or effective use of space, and it'll allow multitudes of families to live in. So it's an efficient use of the province's money, and at the same time it keeps people out of the streets. So that's the plan.
You got this one? Okay.
Affordable housing is a very, very, very difficult discussion to have, because as my colleagues here have said, what is affordable housing? Affordable housing is a regional issue, first of all. Affordable housing was set up to be a temporary solution when it first began. And we need to remember that the people who need the affordable housing also need support with food, they need support with jobs, and they need all different types of support, family-wise as well, because some of them don't have families either. So again, I go back to one of the discussions we had a little earlier in the hour. Education is what's important. We need to educate our people in schools, at work, and wherever else we hang out, that it exists, it isn't going away. And for whatever reason, every year there's more and more and more. So what we really need to focus on is fixing the problem at the grassroots. So when someone isn't in affordable housing, we need to say, hey, how can I help you? Do you need a job? Do you need a skill? Maybe we can help you. We have restaurants that have food they throw out. We have grocery stores that throw food out. I'm running out of time here, but we need to have a facility maybe that maybe we can employ some of these people to help themselves so they feel good about themselves. And they'll grow, because it's all a mindset. We can help people. We need to help. We can do something internally. Thank you.
You're all very good at watching for that red square that comes up. That's very good. Okay. Kinsey, what is your position on school closures in Head Forest, which have caused overcrowding at Frank Hayden School?
To put it simply, I'm against all of them. Fact is, as someone who's done consulting work and worked with the provincial government, I seen the list as it was going out and whatnot, and the fact of the matter is we need to fight harder, right? The city council hasn't thrown its weight behind anything, and as much as we have limited effect, right, it's mostly a school trustee issue, and a provincial issue. It's something that city councilors need to get behind. I was talking to one woman, and she was telling me how her bus route got moved because the school closed, and now her children have to cross Walker's line. Right, and they're young kids, and she's a shift worker, so she doesn't have time. She's out the door at 6 in the morning, so she has to rely on parents she's just met to drive her kids to school, and that's an issue, right? I think at the end of the day, this is something that maybe our current councillors haven't noticed, whether or not they have children or not. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people in Burlington do, a lot of people in Ward 6 do, and I think it's high time we start thinking about our future, right? Those are kids who are going to be going to these schools. Those are the kids who are now stuck in portables. I was in a portable once, and let me tell you, it's not as good as being in a classroom, right? And I think the fact that we're not showing the utmost respect and looking for the best for Burlingtonians and their children shows a lot about current council, right? And if elected, the first thing I would do is throw my support behind any lobbying group that's looking to keep any additional schools from being closed, and look to support more opportunities for educational institutions to open, right? Because there are things that I know the provincial government's looking at and currently questioning some of the decisions to close these schools, because there has been a lot of pushback, and I see no problem championing that issue and looking to push on Minister Lisa Thompson and Deputy Parliamentary Secretary Oosterhoff in adding additional schools and supplying those grants. So, thank you.
Angelo, what is your position on school closures in Head Forest, which have caused overcrowding at Frank Hayden School?
Well, first of all, schools are out of our jurisdiction. That's the first thing. But having said that, we certainly can support and give advice. I see one of our candidates for trustees here, and help them understand our point of view as councillors in our city. So that's very important to know. Secondly, in 2014, for those people, and I think I knocked on everybody's door here anyways in 2014, School closing was on my pamphlet. And a number of people said, are you kidding me? And again, it's in my pamphlet again, this time around. Our growth is happening. We're going to need spaces for kids to go to school. We need to help. We need to communicate with our school boards and say, here's where we're going. And then they need to go to the ministry and say, here's where our city's going. Here's where we know the school's going. You need to help us here. So that's the first things we need to do. Secondly, if they do close, and we've got some closing, we have one in Ward 4, I believe, we have one downtown in our city. I know that the region and the city is lobbying, most cities in Ontario are lobbying to be able to purchase these buildings. Because right now, when the school closes and they want to sell the product, the building, we want to be able to get first crack at it so that we can build something that our community needs. Senior center, activity centers, whatever. So that's where I stand with the school closing. We will support. We don't want to see any closings. Thank you.
Ken, would you like the question?
Go ahead.
What is your position on school closures in Hedden Forest, which have caused overcrowding at Frank Hayden School?
Okay, so ostensibly I'm against the school closures. There could be a business case to close one, but certainly not both of the schools that were being closed here in Burlington. I'm looking to be voted in by the people, for the people, and I don't feel the school board is as responsive or listening, not unlike city council, by the way. It's another example of poor planning. When I tell people that the school board has to start listening to us, there are numerous levers which we could pull to bring them to the table to talk to us, make us understand if that's the case. We permit portables, we permit school additions, we permit school construction, and I think we should use that to greater effect. I find that the school board is continuing to do things similarly as they've done since the Stone Age, where they should examine an organization that is so asset rich that they should switch to a revenue model. Continuing education or partnerships with industry would be very agile for an institution of that sort. And all of these ideas have been talked to with the school board, but there's unfortunately nobody listening. If we look at some of the crazy expenses, certainly the transition from Pearson to M. Robinson seems to have gone relatively smoothly, and that's great. But that was not a frictionless transaction. There was a lot of cost that went into MMR. Some of it could have been used to maintain Lester B. Pearson. And on top of that, we have a $23 million administration center coming down the pipe, 90,000 square feet, same size as City Hall, by the way. Could we redeploy that money better?
Thank you. Angelo, what council decision, past, present, or pending, directly impacting Ward 6, would you have voted against, stopped, voted for, or done differently? I just read them, folks. What council decision, past, present, or pending, directly impacting Ward 6, would you vote for, have voted against, stopped, or done differently?
I think I got the question. So this, in Ward 6, and I'm going to go back to one of my original comments earlier today, or earlier this evening, about rezoning amendments. And that's one of the issues that is happening in Ward 6 daily. I'm going to say daily, I'm exaggerating. It's happened a number of times. The rezoning from employment lands, commercial lands on Thomas Halton and Appleby line on the south west side, where we've got some serious construction going on. We have some rezoning amendments next to the newly formed plaza up here at Alton. So these are the things that I believe need to be questioned. Why do we go from employment lands, commercial lands, to 900, I think it was actually, it's about 700 or 800 units on a corner. Thomas Halton is probably the busiest corner in Ward 6, and it's going to get really busy. Traffic, safety. We don't look at the long-term issues when we make decisions like that. When the zoning applications come in, they're worth an extra 40, 50,000. I'm throwing those numbers out. It's between $40,000 and $80,000 to get a rezoning permit or an official plan amendment.
Thank you, Angelo.
Itself. Sorry. Anyways,
Thank you. Ken?
It's okay.
Got it? Okay.
Okay, so overwhelmingly, it has to be the decision to approve the new official plan. This affects everything. It's actually even affected decisions before the approval of the new official plan, tying to 4853 Thomas Halton, as well as Valera, 4888 Valera, which was zoned mixed-use commercial. We have problems with transit. Ties back to new official plan. We have, concerns about the environment. We have concerns about schools. Well, that's a development problem as well, as a matter of fact. It, impacts taxes demonstrably. And ultimately, it's going to mean lower quality of life, higher cost, and really quite a raw deal for our children, which is the reason why I'm running for council. Thank you.
Kinsey, would you like the question?
No, I'm good. I guess this is what happens. You get stuck in third place when it comes to speaking. You end up agreeing with a bunch of people. But to agree with Ken, it has to be the official plan. The fact is, there's a whole number of delegations that went forward, and they were dismissed. They were treated poorly, and none of their opinions mattered. Right? And I think it's time we revisit it. And we actually sit down and we listen to these people, concerned citizens who've taken the time to collect, whether it be experts or data, and put together a presentation, brought it before council, and we're told by councillors they just completely dismissed, right? And the fact of the matter is, having elected people, both who are good representatives and bad representatives, both on Parliament Hill as well as in Queen's Park, they always represented you. You could call them up and you could ask them about the moon landing, and they'd actually give you an answer, or at the very least look into it. But they wouldn't dismiss you, right? And I think that's the big thing, is being dismissed. And that's the complete opposite of representation. That's what happened to a whole number of delegations, right? And you hear the stories, Pepper Parr's written about them, he's up there in the front, and you hear the stories at the doors, and it's actually dismal. It's disgusting. And I think it's high time we revisit this. And we take these delegations seriously, and we actually put their ideas forward in the new official plan, which is something I would, approve once we have these delegations hearings through and we actually put their ideas into effect. Thank you.
Well, it's now 8:45, and we promised that we would be able to have you out of here by 9 o'clock. So we're going to move to we'll call it session 3, which is your closing remarks. Before we do that, though, I want to thank all of you for your answers to some very challenging questions this evening. And as some of you may have noticed, this evening's debate was being recorded, and it wasn't just for posterity. Rob Gow is over there, and he is attending every debate, the ones for each ward, and the mayor's debate, which will be held on Tuesday, October 9th at Burlington Central High School. You're all invited. All the videos will be available through the ECOB YouTube channel, and actually last night's debate is already up and going. So now, candidates, this is your chance to leave a lasting impression with your closing remarks. You will be given 3 minutes, and we will begin with Kinsey.
Well, to put it simply, folks, at 24 years old, I might not have lived a long life, but I lived an interesting one. And I have a ton of experience dealing with provincial, municipal, and federal politicians and stakeholders. And I'd like to use that experience and leverage it should I be elected. The fact is, you know, our ward, Ward 6, has been let down time and time again. It feels like nobody's listening, and it, you know, like I said, it comes down to the fact that our roads aren't being plowed. You know, people are speeding up and down the streets. There's nothing being done about it. You know, you got all this intensification and the fact that there's massive congestion. The fact is, you know, we have a council that approved intensification in downtown Burlington, which is mindful outside of Ward 6, but affects our residents using the downtown core on an area where, you know, most people who live in those condos that start at $600,000 are probably traveling with the QEW. Now, last time I checked, Brant Street's one lane going south and one lane going north. You put, you know, 700 plus cars on those streets and ask them to all go north to the QEW, you're asking for disaster. And everyone knows what happens when the Skyway closes. I wouldn't want that to be our downtown constantly, right? And that's the issue, is we have councillors who seem to be out of touch with Burlington. And it's concerning. So, you know, by electing me, I hope to give effective representation. You know, I'll be at your doors. I've kind of taken that from a provincial, federal side of things, is banging on the doors no matter what year it is, whether it be an election year or an off year. It's about time you guys got heard. And if you're unavailable to come to town halls or, you know, come out and propose delegations, I'd like to be at your door, and I'll hear your delegation right at the doorstep, and hopefully take that back to City Hall and provide some actual leadership and provide some actual change. Thank you.
Closing comments, and Ken, we'll go to you. I'm switching it all up, you guys. Ken.
All right.
Actually, you're right. Angelo. No change.
Well, first of all, thank you for listening tonight. I do want to say that the outcome with this election on October the 22nd will have pretty lasting effects moving forward. Since 2014, when I ran the last time, I came in a close second. I stayed tuned in, I stayed engaged, I worked with community representatives, I've worked with Ward 6 residents, and I've helped them with issues from hydro corridor, tree taken down, to walkways on the bike paths. And I've been doing that for 4 and 5 years. I know my way around City Hall. I've been involved in most communities in our Ward 6, and I have the knowledge that it takes to be your councillor. So I'm asking for your vote on October 22nd. Thank you.
Ken.
That's for last? I don't know. Okay. All right, so what I can promise you, it was a forum that disappoints me somewhat, that I wasn't able to talk to some of the mandates that I would have loved to expand on. So if you're from rural Burlington, that would be a great one to talk to. If you're a senior, if you live in Halton Regional Housing, etc., that I have concrete ideas that, you know, are high impact and reasonable or low cost. What I really want to do at a high level is bring more representation to North Burlington. I think everything, including the center of the world, is Ward 2, downtown, City Hall, Brant Street, and that's just not true. I have ways that if the people want to rein in developers and it's the fortitude of the new council, we can end these buildings. We can bring these developers back to the negotiation table, and the development will be on our terms, not theirs. And trust me, this has been ideas that have been discussed and researched and discussed with legal firms, etc. We just have to have the courage. Further, I bring a strong and sophisticated business acumen to City Hall. I'm an analyst, portfolio manager. I deal with an enormous amount of detail on a daily basis. Even though we're going to have a completely new council, probably a new mayor, I'm not so certain that, well, correction, I'm certain that that skill set would be extremely helpful. Finally, if you vote for me, what I'm promising you is smart, tough, and effective as a councillor for Ward 6 in the city of Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us this evening, and with closing remarks, I welcome back Elizabeth.
I take this opportunity again to thank the Halton School Board for making possible the use of this venue. A special thanks to Deb Timstra, our moderator. Thank you very much. And to you, the candidates, Angelo, Ken, and Kinsey, thank you very much for participating and giving your views so clearly and so passionately. Thank you very much for participating. And to the residents, to you, thank you very much for your attendance and for your questions. Thank you to the volunteers, Steve and Jim, and to all the volunteers who have participated in making this evening a success. I do want to say that this event has been organized by the engaged citizens of Burlington, and I express my thanks on your behalf to ECOB for making this event possible and for organizing it. We encourage all citizens to be active and to cast your vote because you matter. Thank you very much, and safe trip home. Good night.